First item would be approval of the minutes from the March 15th meeting. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes from last meeting? Corrections, deletions? Doesn't sound like it. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll move to accept the minutes. Robert Day.
Thank you, Robert. Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
John, this is Pete. I'm going to abstain because I wasn't there for the
Right.
longest meeting in state board history, I think.
I'll take the blame for that.
And
Okay.
welcome, Robert.
First
Thank you.
opportunity for comments or concerns regarding the meeting agenda from any of the observers. Public. Nothing going on in the world of the CFCPA? Well, I don't know. You're on mute.
My apologies. We're going to wait to the end because I think that you'll take care of all of our concerns during your discussion today.
Okay. I will mention one thing. This is apparently the 10th anniversary, my 10th anniversary on the board and as the chair, and which is pretty bad considering I'm a believer in term limits, certainly for the chair. So I'd like everybody to think if, in the future at some time, if it makes any sense to do some rotations, whether anybody might be interested in the taking over the chair. 10 years, you get a little stale.
Well, congratulations on the 10 years.
Yeah. So, okay, moving on. Legal division. Anything to report?
Nothing today. Thank you.
Okay. Old business. We tabled last meeting consideration of accepting the VITA continuing education credits for the trainees for under the federal government program for assisting people in preparing tax returns.
Yes, the only new thing is that last time I believe Tim asked us to survey the states. So we did send out a national survey, short survey of NASBA, and it was sent to all the jurisdictions, and only 21 states responded. And of the 21 states, only 5 states stated that they would accept VITA as CPE credits.
Okay,
and
interesting.
Yeah. So none of the New England states responded, and of the 21 states responded, New York and California, who we look closely to what they're doing, they do not accept VITA. And the comments that I provided in the blurb were from the 5 states that do accept VITA. One said, we don't approve, so it's basically, we don't approve any CPE. So they're like, they require, it's upon the CPA to do their own, do their own standards. And the second state said that it looks like because VITA is never approved with NASBA, so the licensee can only report up to 50% of their credits. So that's all we have that's new from last time.
Okay. I don't know if that requires any action by us, unless anybody is interested in going, shall we say, going against the flow here. It would be interesting to know, and we can find out at our convenience, whether NASBA has actually ever been approached to approve it. But
This is
yes.
Bonnie. So NASBA's approval of CPE, and Lisa probably knows more politically correct to say this, is not really a review of the programs much. It's more of a revenue issue for them, where if you pay them so much, depending on the volume of CPE work, you get, you become a NASBA state. So I don't, we're on record, so I want to be careful how I word this.
Understood.
But you get the gist of it. So I wouldn't say because something's NASBA approved for CPE, or is not, it's not because it wasn't approved. It's that somebody chose not to pay a large fee to NASBA to get that approval because it's not required in all of the states. And as Kat said, when she was talking about the VITA program in some states, when she says it's not approved, it's not that somebody said that it's not worthy of CPE. It's that they did not seek approval there, oftentimes because, like our state, you don't have to seek approval. You have to follow the rules and have like a formal program. You have to meet certain criteria. If you do, then your program is a CPE program. So I think it's a little bit confusing sometimes when we talk about, is something an approved CPE program, because in many states there's not an approval process. Like, you don't have to seek approval to provide CPE here. You just have to follow the rules and have that formal program. Lisa, did I say anything incorrect or leave anything out that I should have added?
No, I think with vendors that I have spoken to, I know that, we do business with some that do not register because, the fee is high. And, I don't know what NASBA's process is once you pay the money, if they review every course. But there is a feeling out there that the fees are on the high side, is what I would say. And, I would agree with Bonnie.
And the federal government's not going to pay out of a matter of principle. Maybe it would make sense if one of our tax professional participants could just take a look at the program and see whether it fits, whether it's appropriate for credit. I mean, if it's something as good or better than we would get by our firms.
I went through it. It's been a long time now, but when I was in law school, I was a volunteer, and it was pretty extensive. And Kat, you've been through it as well, didn't you say?
I did, yes. I mean, you had to stay. For me, I had to sign in at the beginning, had to stay to the end. It was very strictly monitored. It was, straight through intensive. So, yes. And I agree with Bonnie earlier that, not if it's a NASBA approved course, then it's automatically accepted, but it does not need to be, a NASBA approved registered course to be accepted. I'm sorry, I just got an email from Carla.
Yeah, I'm just sending the link to her now.
Oh, great, thanks.
I do have one question, John. Is the VITA training, is that provided by the IRS?
It is,
so.
isn't it?
I see Ken shaking his head. I know that I can tell you that our rep in Connecticut from the IRS, Joe McCarthy, does frequent trainings that we, send out and provide to our members. And I don't know if, those credits would also be in question. I would anticipate that anything that the IRS put out for practitioners would be acceptable as long as they were following the guidelines in the NASBA regulations, which I believe that they do.
Okay, well, I don't know if Unless anybody disagrees, it seems the best answer for this is to review the course.
Did New York or California indicate why they wouldn't accept the?
Yeah, no, the survey only gives them an option, yes or no. And they clicked no.
Okay.
If I can chime in a second, I'm a guest, Ken Heaslip. I'm have some material I'm presenting later on this topic, in this area. But Pete, to directly address your answer, New York only allows either A, NASBA approved courses, or B, New York approved courses.
Okay.
If they're not one of those two, they don't approve it. California, I'm not completely familiar with their process. But this, by the way, this topic feeds into what I wanted to talk about later as well. So I have some information that if you want me to do it all now, I will. Otherwise, I'll wait till later.
We can do it now.
Okay. Well, I've been through the regulations very carefully. By the way, I'm Ken Heaslip. I teach a lot of CPE in the state of Connecticut. For 20 years, I've been with large national NASBA-approved companies. Because of the pandemic and the industry, I'm now doing them on my own. So, but one of my main courses I teach, mostly for the Connecticut Society, but for other courses, is a Connecticut ethics course, which is specific to Connecticut regulations. So I think it's pretty safe to say that I've been in those regulations more than anybody who's outside the board. In terms of, I've been updating that course for 15 years now. So I'm familiar with it. And I think that where you're going to get into problems with the VITA program is not on substance. You know, the standards say you have to announce the level of the course, you have to announce refund policies and things like that, which really would not necessarily apply to the IRS or VITA. The material, I've taken the VITA program. The material is very comprehensive. It is peer reviewed by other people. It fits within all the standards, I would think, that are substance in terms of quality of the program. I don't know whether it would fit, like I said, with some of the administrative type of things, how it's advertised and who it's advertised to and things like that. The only thing I'm not sure of is how they keep their records. Do they evaluations and material? I'm sure they keep their material for a long time, but evaluations and how they respond to evaluations. The NASBA standards, which are the only standards out there for CPE, are extremely detailed and comprehensive. And by the way, the Connecticut standards follow that genre of, they're not quite as detailed as NASBA, but pretty close.
Okay, thank you. That is very helpful. Any suggestions on where we go forward? None. Well, I think now you have gone through that. The only thing that we have missing really here in data as to whether it would be approvable is, do they keep the appropriate records and reviews? Is that correct, as I understand it, or roughly? Okay, well,
So,
why don't we table this and see what we can find out? It seems to me that it might be a more rigorous course than a lot that I've seen out there that do get approval.
I agree with your instinct, honestly. Yeah.
So I don't know if we can easily find that out, but if we do, we can come to a vote up or down on July 2nd, I guess. And,
Kat, when you took the course, was there a course evaluation at the end and so forth?
No, but you had to take a test. So in order to become to volunteer, you have to pass the test. And I know that based on the VITA literature there, they will only award CE credits for tax preparers and quality reviewers, people who have passed the test. So I know that I was very nervous when I took the test, because if you fail, you have only one chance for retake, and that's it. And I know that they do keep record of who you are up to 3 years. So they will have record for, like, example, I'm not allowed to do last year's tax returns because I wasn't approved last year. So my site coordinator has records of who's who, what year, and things like that. But I don't know about the training materials. I do know that they do keep record who is, who's qualified to be, in what year.
If I could just throw in one other thing, I just popped up on the web because I take the IRS National Tax Forum every year. And I popped up their registration for this year with the IRS, and it says on their web that attendance in the tax forums qualifies for continuing education for enrolled agents, certified public accountants, annual filing season program participants, and California Tax Education Council participants. Now, it doesn't say NASBA, but they are advertising it qualifies for continuing education for CPAs.
John, it's Bud. Just a
Yes.
question on context on this. Because I don't remember the last meeting that clearly, but I thought, it seems pretty clear that the education aspect of this, like the courses that they take to be, qualified to do this volunteer work, that seems clear to me that should be approved, because that's as rigorous, as long as it meets the rules, but as rigorous as anything we do for CPE. But I thought the question was the other things they do I may be wrong about this, but it was the other things they do for the program, the actual doing the tax return volunteer work. I thought there was some discussion about, getting credit for those hours as opposed to the education hours. Am I wrong on that? Or maybe Kat, that's a question for you. I forget the context of the
That's
discussion.
interesting. I thought it was the training specifically that we were talking about.
It's just the
And
training.
not the
that makes it
experience.
Clear.
Right. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know, I just thought, it occurred to me that I went through training because I was a first year. I believe that next year I could just take the test. I don't need to go through training again. From what I understand, again, I'm not there yet, so I don't know much about the program other than.
Well, it seems to me that we should just focus on the training.
If it was just the training, it seems clear to
Yeah.
me. If it gets beyond the training, then it's a gray area to me anyway.
Right. I would agree. Particularly if you're doing like 50 EZs, same every year, it's
Right.
the training would count. Does anybody have any thoughts? I'm kind of leaning towards saying that the training itself should looks like it should be qualified. It doesn't have to be NASBA qualified to be accepted in the state of Connecticut, but you have to have all the records and support, etc., and the details. But then again, I've been retired for 8 years, and it could have changed. Go ahead, Kat.
So I'm looking at the handout, the fact sheet, the VITA fact sheet that you have on page 2.
Mm-hmm.
It says, the first full paragraph, it says volunteers can receive up to 14 hours of CE credits for certifying in tax law at the advanced level and volunteering as a quality reviewing. So it seems to me like you just have to certify and volunteering. You do the work and not the taking the courses, right?
Okay, I understand. The coursework is I think to me only would be something of a no-brainer, but tax professionals would get all 40 of their hours every single spring if it were just the experience, and that wouldn't seem to fit. It might for the federal, but I don't know that it would fit for the CPA designation at all.
I agree.
So
Isn't there a requirement, though, for the course to be evaluated by the participants? I'm just wondering if that's the missing piece.
Well, good question. I can't remember.
I don't know if that's, I don't know, I might be getting my,
I'm wondering whether all these
Oversight
online
bodies
courses,
mixed up.
everybody's
I
going
can't
to have evaluations.
mm,
Uh,
I
And it's
can't
not,
recall if
yeah,
Connecticut requires that.
it's not exactly in the interest of the students to give bad evaluations, which could knock out their credit either. By the way, good morning, Carla. Happy to see you've beat the Microsoft Teams monster again. We just,
Well,
other than this conversation, we only accepted the minutes.
okay, thank you. I'm very sorry. I was thinking that it was the link was under a separate email, and it turned out it was in the agenda at the top. So took me a little bit of time. Sorry about that.
So, as everybody knows, the chair cannot make motions. So we can table this as old business, waiting for a little more information. We could propose not to accept. We could propose to accept the training time. Anybody have any ideas?
I don't know. I think I would lean towards proposing to accept qualified training time under the, whatever we want to call it, the VITA C program as qualified, as long as it, is qualified, meaning it meets this, the Connecticut regulations like any other training course.
Right.
I would second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or discussion?
I think if we don't do something, it's going to create ambiguity, and we only meet it every few months. So I think it's better to go ahead now and pass that motion.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Or raise
Aye.
your hand since we're in Hollywood Squares here. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. We have,
So,
oh, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, if you recall the past, at the last meeting, the second part to that question is, the CEs are not, provided until July. So would the board be willing to accept a certificate that is dated after June 30th
Oh, well, if
for
it's
that
dated,
year?
if it's dated after June 30th, but for training that happened before June 30th, I'm not a lawyer, but I'd say that would be a problem. I don't know whether we even have to vote on that, but I'll leave that up to the members.
So here's my concern. The training occurs before June 30th, with the certificates issued in July. While I can see an argument to give credit for when the training occurred, my fear is that someone's going to rely on that training and then for some reason not get the certificate, and we're going to end up with someone who's not gotten their CLE requirements met. Does that make sense or no?
I'm not sure I follow. I'm sorry.
So I'm like, I'll take this VITA training. This will meet my CLE requirements. And then for some reason I don't get the certificate in July, and now I've screwed up the prior year. So I'm inclined to say it should count for the year the certificate's issued, but I'm open to other thoughts.
We talking about calendar year here?
No, we're talking about getting the CPE in time for the June 30 cutoff for licensure. And so if they take it in the spring, but the federal government doesn't get around to actually issuing the certificates until July, and I'm not sure why, can it count?
CLE is so
CPE for us.
CLE, which is what lawyers do, is self-certified. CPE, does that relies on the certificate of the issuing authority, or is it self-certified?
Yes, it's not self-certified.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So my concern stands.
But the timing, isn't it? You have to do it by December 31st of that year is when you complete the form with your CPE for the year. So you'll
Oh,
get the form
okay.
in July.
Well, then,
Right.
then I think it's fine potentially to count it if it was done in the fiscal year, before July 1st. But I do think my issue of like somebody could screw it up and not get the certificate is a possibility, but people just have to live with, that risk, I guess.
That's what I think. Yeah, I agree. There's some risk, but at least from a timing standpoint, it probably is not that
Yeah.
unusual.
Okay. I feel satisfied then.
Okay. Did we get a vote on that?
No.
Did we pass it?
I
Okay.
will move to accept the VITA training to count towards the CPE requirement during the year in which the training is actually administered, regardless of when the certificate is issued.
Okay, that would go on top of Bud's in addition to. Okay, a
Yes.
second?
Second,
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have two items of new business, which should be pretty quick, and I don't believe we have any more.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, can I exercise a point of personal privilege now
Yes.
that we're to new business? And I would like to make a motion which can be voted on by the appropriate members of the board to congratulate you, John Schuler, and Pete Niedermeyer for successfully completing 10 years on our state board of accountancy.
successfully, I'm not sure.
Well, we're going to vote that way anyway.
Yeah.
So do we have a second? for
Second.
that? Okay.
Go ahead.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, opposed? Abstain? Right. Congratulations.
Thank you, Carl.
Okay, on to new business. Tammy Ratio. Would you like to run with that, Kat? Request for,
Yeah, no, I like the documents have been sent to you. Basically, she completed this certificate and she's asking to use it as CPEs. I don't know anything about the program. Definitely know the CIA. I think it's internal audit something.
Lime CIA Challenge Review.
Right. So it's, it's not a program, so there's no monitoring of hours. She only sent the program recommended hours of studies, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about this specific program, so we forward you all the documents that we received.
Okay, I'm reopening here.
So she completed the GLIAM CIA Challenge Review.
Well, the topics are certainly on point. That's all this tells us.
I guess, Kat, isn't it the equivalent of studying for the CPA exam? I mean, she's gone through I forget, Becker, isn't it the name, for like the equivalent for internal auditor. She's gone through some internal training to prep for the CIA certification, which she was successful in getting, which is great.
Yeah, I don't know enough to say if it's equivalent or not, but yes, she did complete this program. She took the test and she passed. But as to how many hours and what the specific areas of study that she, you know, studied. I don't know
Well,
anything.
there is that chart for the month
Yeah.
that shows the topics. I don't know anything about GLIME internal auditing. I'm afraid I passed the CPA exam in '76, so I have absolutely no idea what got accepted for for CPA review courses.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
all I know about GLIME is that when I was active in the professorship for a long time, at least up to the 2000s, I think it was GLIME Brothers, but GLIME did a CPA test preparation course that a lot of accounting majors who were studying for the CPA exam took. That's the only thing I know about GLIME studies.
Okay. Well, I doubt that it'd be worth 150 hours.
John, Ken has his hand up. I don't know if.
Oh, yes, Ken, go ahead. Oh, you're on mute, Ken.
Thank you. I keep trying to stay within my boundaries as a guest, but I'm very familiar with GLIME. Irv GLIME was a friend of mine. He passed away about 5 years ago. GLIME, I believe, I would be surprised if they're not a NASBA sponsor.
They
So,
are. I
yeah,
apologize. I
Yeah,
just
in my
checked, they are.
opinion,
Oh.
and this is just my opinion, is that if they're a NASBA sponsor, if they think it qualifies, they should issue a certificate.
And we have a certificate.
No, we don't. We have a
Oh.
certificate that she passed the course, but not that she completed CPEs.
We have a certificate that she passed the test to become a certified internal auditor, not that she.
Oh, the certificate of completion of the courses of 150 hours from January 2 to February 2nd is not a certificate of completion?
It's not a CPA, like a CPE for CPE purposes. It's for the CIA purposes. I believe she stated in her letter to you that the CIA program also needs CE, you know, and that she would, let me see here.
Well,
Oh yeah, I'm not sure. All I know is that, you know, it's not CPE certificates that she received. It's completion of that review program.
well, has she asked GLIME whether they could do that? I mean, it sounds like they're a reputable organization and they do this, and if they're NASBA members, which we don't know, but Kenneth assumed, they should be able to provide that to her.
Can you ask her
John.
for that, Kat? That might
Yeah.
be, sounds like a good
That might be the,
We could, yes.
yes, Lisa.
I am on NASBA's website right now, and GLIME is listed as an approved CPE provider under the and they do have on demand, and it is under the QAS self-study. And I'm looking at their course listing. It's quite extensive, and there are programs in here that state CIA training. I don't know if this is exact, but I thought that might be helpful to let you know they are an approved NASBA sponsor.
It is, thank you. And so it seems to me she should ask, because GLIME should be able to report whether that is approved by that particular course that she took is approved for CPE by NASBA.
Okay, we can go back to her. Thank you.
And that'll save you and Lisa the work. She should. Okay. Next, Ken Heaslip Seminars LLC. Now, what's the story on that? Because I saw something from the state of New York, an application to the state of New York. And I'm not sure what exactly they're asking of us to be approved as a CPE provider.
You want me to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I was
Yeah.
gonna
Okay.
use
Okay. Yeah.
We're pretty open about this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just don't want to overstep my bounds, as I said earlier. I listen to all your meetings. I feel like I know you all personally because I've watched the videos of all of your meetings as part of my updating process. The last meeting caught me a little by surprise, mostly based on discussion on the VITA, because I was I teach in a lot of different states, and Connecticut is one of, I don't know, maybe 20% of the states that has less defined rules about what is CPE. Like I said earlier, New York says we're going to either register you ourselves in a formal registration process, or we're going to default to NASBA. New Jersey is the same way, where I'm from. I'm actually from New Jersey, although I do more work in Connecticut than New Jersey, thanks to Lisa. So it's, but the, so when Connecticut has always been a little more loose. Basically, before the new regulations came out, it was acceptable to the board, was never clearly defined. At meetings from time to time, you would approve certain programs in, like you just did with VITA or whatever. And in the past, they've approved companies that were registered with other state boards, like a CP reciprocity, provider reciprocity type of thing. Now that the new regulations are out and you're doing CPE audits, I'm noticing a lot more formal review on the processes. And as a provider, it concerns me a little bit, because I want to make sure that when I'm hired by a Connecticut CPA firm and I issue a CPE certificate, that it's acceptable. And so, and I'm not the only one doing it. There's a lot of people doing it. And when I looked at the agenda today and it said I'm looking for my approval, I'm not sure you want to have an agenda item for every company that wants approval, because there's a lot. I teach, like I said earlier, I teach in post-pandemic in mostly the Northeast, going from Washington, D.C. through Maine. And I also teach a little bit in Indiana, Illinois, Texas. So I have a national perspective, and I'm very familiar with the UAA and the NASBA model rules as well. And Connecticut seems to, when in developing the statutes and the regulations, have made a point of being flexible on accepting CPE without requiring NASBA. John, you had mentioned earlier about the costs of NASBA. I did apply for NASBA approval. I spent 2 hours online filling out an application, and then they said to me, to proceed to the next step, send us a $2,900 check. And that was for less than 10 courses to be approved. Now, I understand some of that's a renewal fee, some of that is an initial fee, but it is expensive. So every CPA firm in Connecticut that wants to go through that process is going to have to pony up, $2,900 just to get registered with NASBA. So that to me is something that the board has tried to avoid. It's your choice whether you want to do that or not. But the alternative is that if NASBA is not going to approve the quality, then that puts it on the board. And that's a big responsibility. And now that you're looking at it in CPE audits, it seems to me as if, you might be opening up a can of worms that you have to at least give us more guidance before you go that route in there. As I mentioned, the reason why you got the package from New York is that in my correspondence with Kat, I sent her that, because in that package, I'm approved by New York. New York has this process, and I certify in there that I'm following NASBA regulations. They don't call it that, but they ask, what do you do with evaluations? Do you have your courses reviewed by a second party? Are they current? Are they up to date? what are your do you have qualified instructors? They hit all the points the Connecticut board hits. They hit in that New York application. So I've always worked, I kind of said, where I worked on the assumption that if I'm approved in New York, I meet the qualifications in Connecticut. But now that I see that you're questioning the IRS, I'm saying, well, if you're going to question the IRS, maybe you're going to question me. And more importantly, I've talked to some of my CPA firm clients, and they don't just hire me. You know, they hire me when I have an expertise in A&A and ethics. It takes 100 hours to develop a program. It's easier to hire me than have one of their staff members go through and do 100 hours worth of research. So they hired outside people. But these same firms do in-house tax training with their partners and managers. And they issue CPE certificates from the firm.
Right.
And the question is, do they qualify? And if you're going to start
If I
auditing
can if I can
Yeah.
interject there, that they have always qualified as long as they maintain the appropriate records for the course.
that's
And
correct.
we've never felt it was necessary for them to come to the board for that.
Yeah. Well, but I guess what I'm questioning is, are you now in CPE audits looking at, if they're not on the NASBA list, we better check the sponsor, because it seems like the default. And what was said in the last meeting was the default was NASBA or large firm, not any firm. At the last meeting, it said large firm, and I'm not sure what the distinction is, other than large firms have large capacity to come up with quality products. So that was my concern. I really wasn't looking to, can you approve my course? I was looking for some guidance that when I go to my firms, and that I can tell them that this is acceptable to the board. And that's really, because I would hate to tell them that and then have their CP certificates denied.
Oh, understand. Actually, to tell you the truth, this is something that's never really come up before.
I think it's the new regulations with the new audits that triggered it for me, at least.
We don't have new regs. We don't have new regulations.
The
In this
regulations, I
area.
think, are dated
Oh.
2019.
Oh, a few years ago, yeah.
You're not no, but if you take away the pandemic, they are. And this is the first CP audits under the new regulations, I think.
Well, just to perhaps as a temporary solution here, if you wished us to consider it right now and approve your course based on your approval from New York and what you've provided us, we can put that in consideration for the future. I don't want to have to approve every single firm that comes up. That's ridiculous, and we've never felt the necessity to, and nobody's ever really asked us till recently. The IRS was something of a unique, different thing, and yeah, I just as soon set that up for a discussion at a time, so we all had a little time to think about it. But if it's important to Kenneth Heslape LLC, I would be glad to entertain a motion to get you through the uncertainty at this point.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'm wondering if we approve this, which in general I'm in favor of approving his courses, what kind of a precedent does that set for future issues in this regard?
Good question. I think we do better to indicate that this is not setting up a requirement for the board to approve individual courses or courses individually. And that that would come up with something I was going to bring up for the future for under new business for consideration.
Can I ask a question of Kat? Can you just clarify on this, the CPE audits? Are we actually looking at whether a course is NASBA certified versus not?
Partly. I mean, we started doing audits. We've always done audits, but we do more now than ever. Well, when we look at it's case by case basis, you know, so if it's NASBA approved, then it's automatically accepted. But if it's not, then we would look at the details. You know, how they do they meet the requirements? You know, a lot of some firms can't provide that. Like they don't keep track at all. They don't know who attended. They don't know how many hours. When it's like that, then we bring it to the board for enforcement action. But so we don't. It's you know, if Mr. Heaslip's courses have come up, it probably would have been accepted because it was accepted by New York. You know, those courses. So, but we don't have any strict formal guidelines other than, you know, does it meet their standards?
Well,
So if a CPA firm had in-house training or whatever and issued certificates for it, are you questioning that? I guess.
Yeah, so the standards require, if you look at section in the middle there, like how many hours, who's teaching, what's the, you know, was the prerequisite stated, things like, yeah, we would look for evidence of that. And, you know, most of the large firms will have that ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that there's probably, to Kat's point, a lot of small firms that are unaware of the quality standards within the regulations. And there might be issuing certificates without following the quality standards. I think that is probably a safe assumption. And maybe there needs to be an education program going out to the firms as to what they have to keep. But before 2019, the word was, as long as you issue a certificate, it's okay. And these new regulations, and I forget what the regulation said before 2019, to be honest with you. But the
well,
it's something that I think that I brought it up to some of my small client firms, and they were concerned that they were not an automatic acceptance because their staff relies on those CP certificates.
A lot of this,
I don't remember that, you know, my memory of the past years is if they thought that all they had to do is a certificate and not keep records of who attended, et cetera, they were sadly mistaken. And it had nothing to do with what the regulations or the standards were at the time.
Yeah, I agree.
some of the small firms that we have taken action against didn't even have certificates. They would just write in their renewal application that infirm program, and that's it. They couldn't even state the dates, when it was held, what they studied. Those are the you know, the cases that we take enforcement actions on.
Are you taking enforcement actions against the CPA firm or against the individuals that submitted?
Sometimes both. It depends on the case by case basis.
Well, I will bring up a matter of what I was going to bring on just for new business, not to, because it's not on the agenda, we can't discuss it, but to put on the January 5th is, well, first is in the past, and it's before your time, Kat, because the last one we did this for, and Carla and I think, are the only ones that would remember it, was when Michelle Siegel came and told us that we didn't have to fear yet one more switch between departments in the state. But we had a summer retreat, which was an official meeting. We went someplace in Hartford and brought in lunch and talked about some of the issues where you would consider some of these things, like just discussion of what are the big issues, what are we doing in training, what we should be thinking about for the coming year. So I'd like everybody to just consider if we can put it on the agenda, discuss it for January 5th, whether we would do something like that again and revive an old practice which we haven't done for a while. Second, we do have in June a regional meeting for NASBA. Tim will be there, but not as a member of the Connecticut board, but as a member of the NASBA board. I would love to go, but I don't think I'm able to. And it's going to be Ken Bishop's swan song and Dan Dustin's sort of entry into the top. If anybody could do it, these are usually, they're very worthwhile. It's in Nashville. Whether that's a plus or a minus, I don't know. It depends, I guess, on if you're into the music scene.
It's in Kentucky in June.
Oh, it's in Kentucky? I'm sorry.
Louisville, I think.
Louisville?
Going, but
Okay, if
yeah,
you're into horses.
I looked at going, but I'm out of town the week before, and I can't live with 2 weeks out of the office in a row. So apologies.
Yeah, and I'll be taking care of granddaughters at that point, and then I can't dump what, 4 of them on Peggy alone.
I would just say too, an option is if anybody's interested, I'm doing it this year. There's 2 regional meetings, so it's really not so regional. The only thing is if you can't go to your region and you do go to another one, the board members miss out on a discussion that they have a breakout session for your region, which is just one section of the 3-day conference. So I'm actually going to Omaha, Nebraska, yay me, 2 weeks later because I have a commitment already that I can't change for the Eastern Regional. So the Western Regional is 2 weeks later in Omaha. And the programs are exactly the same with the exception of those breakouts. I can't participate in those breakouts. For me, it's not a big loss. You as board members would miss out on the opportunity to go to your breakout session with your region.
Okay, well, technically past the sign up date and but anyway, they've always let us come in after the sign up date in the past. So if anybody could really give some significant thought to that and see if you could make it happen, I would appreciate it. They are worthwhile. And one other thing to consider, we discussed in the last time, but put on the agenda for this time is actually having an in-person meeting and planning that. I think it's highly useful for an organization not to be on computer screens once in a while. We'll still have to arrange for computer screens, so, for example, interested people from New Jersey can attend.
I spend more time in Connecticut than you would imagine.
Well, you're free to show up on in-person meetings too. Do we have any further comments? Any other items, new business to put on the agenda for next time from anybody on the board?
I have a comment. In doing my research for that last presentation, I noticed that there is a little disconnect between your statutes, your regulations, and your website on CPE reciprocity. That's where somebody is licensed in another state, and rather than have them go through CPE rules from multiple states, they just do it where their principal business is located. We're having this issue in New Jersey, to be honest with you, and I'm working with the New Jersey board on this. The statute says, and if I'll read it, a renewal.
Before you go on, Ken,
yeah.
I'll tell you we have considered this, and this is a long-term thing. Connecticut takes the longest time to change a regulation.
I understand
even
that.
a statute of any state in the union. So some of these things are in process.
Okay, good. Then I won't go into it. You're aware of it. That's all it's important. But when I teach the ethics course and when I teach the people in my room what their responsibilities are. Let's say somebody, I don't really think there's an issue with Rhode Island or Massachusetts, but there is an issue with New York. And so if somebody is duly licensed and has an office in New York, because you're working on it, I don't want to ask for anything else, but it's hard to teach when the statutes and the regulations say two different things. And I'm very aware of the fact that I work in New Jersey legislature,
Right.
how many years it takes to change these things. So
Yeah. Statutes are actually easier to change than regulations, believe it or not.
are they in New Jersey?
Yeah.
It's the other way
No,
around.
in Connecticut, yeah.
Yeah, in New Jersey, it's the other way around. But the one thing I do want to point out as you're looking at this, and this is a fact that not many people know, and I'm assuming that the bigger issues, like I said, in New York CPA licenses are issued forever, and they're not renewed. And as a matter of fact, you're not even allowed to give them back. It's a life sentence when you're a New York CPA. The only way if you want to void yourself of the rules is to go inactive, which needs permission, and permission requires that you promise not to use numbers in the state of New York again. I'm being facetious, but if you read the regulations, it's like that. Or if you get it taken away through a disciplinary action. So when you're looking at the laws, you keep referring to the renewal of a certificate. And in New York, it does not get renewed. What New York does is they register CPAs, which if you're practicing public accounting, you must be registered, but the license is good forever. And that's what's causing a big problem in New Jersey. Because what does it count? You try to, and so just be aware of that fact, because I'm assuming, like in New Jersey, Connecticut has a big issue with New York in that area. And and then there's an issue which you're probably aware of between sometimes it says resident and sometimes it says non-resident and sometimes it's silent, and that's another issue in there. But if you're aware of it and if you're working on it, I just want, my purpose was to make you aware of it.
Understood. Understood. Appreciate it. Okay. Anybody else with any comments or concerns? Bonnie?
Actually, I just want to raise one thing quick. It's at the next regional meeting, we're going to hear a lot about pathways, and the AICPA Council meeting is coming up later this month, and that's going to have a huge discussion about pathways. And on the 14th or 15th of this month, there's a big study with all the stakeholders in it, including NASPA and the schools, etc., is being released. It's called NPAD, and they're releasing that stakeholder, that pipeline study. So hopefully we'll find out more about it at the council meeting, and it'll be discussed also at the regional meetings. But I will do my best to pull some information together to share with you for when you do have your breakout session, because both organizations are looking at alternative pathways, as you know, and just a heads up to keep an eye out for those of you that are AICPA members. Keep an eye out for that study when it's released in a week and a half or so.
Absolutely. That's important. Very important. Okay. We'll make sure that gets on our agenda for the next time also. Anybody wish to propose a motion to adjourn?
I will make the motion to adjourn. Sorry, Stacy.
That's all right. I'll second.
Okay. Okay, I was surprised that one took so long.
Yeah.
No discussion on motions to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you all for spending time here on a screen on a beautiful day. And we'll see everybody on July 2nd.
See you then.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you, John. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.